Welcome to the Bywords Show. I'm your host, Hannah Hughes. Bywords is all about equipping women for purposeful living by starting conversations, celebrating stories, and inspiring faith. In a world that applauds the hustle, I'm here to help you break free from the lies and come back to what really matters. It's time to get real, get rooted in truth, and come alive in relationship with Jesus so you can show up to each day with intention and confidence no matter where you're at in your story. Here we believe that embracing our stories brings hope, healing, and purpose to the process, and sharing our stories helps others do the same. Whether you're looking for a midweek faith refresh, practical tools for pursuing your dreams, or just need some good old-fashioned girl talk, you're in the right place. Grab your latte and let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Bywords Show. Today is the day. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm super excited today to introduce you to Greta Eskridge, who's with us today to talk about a pretty big, important topic, which is pornography, but specifically how to have these conversations with our kids. And she's just released this book. And I am just so excited to hear from you, Greta. So thank you, first of all, for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me and for being willing to have this conversation. That's a really big deal.
Absolutely. I'm really excited. But before we dive in, I have to ask you our little warm-up question that I ask all our guests just as a get to know you icebreaker. And it's what's been filling your cup lately, literally, but also figuratively.
Literally, what's filling my cup is always coffee. It's my number one drink of choice, and sparkling water. And then
Ooh, yeah.
the other thing that's filling my cup with joy is right outside my window, there is a mama hummingbird who has made a nest in our rose
Oh,
bush, and there are two eggs. This is the second year she's made a nest there. And I'm not even kidding you. Like, I feel like the proud grandparent.
oh.
So we check on her multiple times a day, check on the babies. We watched her build a nest. It's just been so fun.
I love that. Oh, that is so sweet. Like just seeing the beautiful life happening right before your eyes. Oh my gosh, hummingbirds are magical. So I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's been fun. I mean, she even like got spider webs out the corners of my window, outside the window, because I need to power wash the house. But now I won't. Because she used spider webs to like attach her nest to the rose bush, so it's stable. Like, it's incredible to see what God's creation, what it can do. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. No, that kind of stuff blows my mind every time. And we were just talking about how you homeschool your kids. So I'm sure
Mhm.
stuff like that is just a treasure trove of learning opportunity and just being able to see that.
Yes, exactly.
Ah, that is so fun. Well, Greta, you've got so many amazing things happening in your life right now. You're in a full season right now with this new book launch. But I would love to know, like, how did you end up in this world,
Hmm.
having these conversations, these hard conversations, these important conversations, specifically about pornography?
Yeah, from hummingbirds to pornography. It's quite a jump, right? And it doesn't make sense to most people, even to me. I never would have picked this as my topic. This is not something that I ever really had to deal with as a kid or even as a young adult. Pornography was not part of my life, wasn't exposed to it. Just, I was really fortunate. And then pornography became an issue in my marriage. Probably, I don't know, we had been married for maybe 12 years. My husband confessed to having an affair and being addicted to pornography. And
Mhm.
I had no idea at the time that those two things are often go hand in hand, because with pornography addiction comes a lot of times unwanted sexual behavior. Because what happens with repeated pornography use is there is a desire for a bigger dopamine hit, for more than just what pornography is providing. And
Yeah.
so it broke my heart, but it also opened my heart to learning about the harms, the dangers, the devastation that pornography can cause. Because as my husband immediately went into healing from his addiction, I also had to heal. I had to heal as a
Mhm.
betrayed wife, but I also had to heal by like learning how to help him. I had to learn how we were going to help our kids, because we both were like, we want our kids to have better tools than we were given. I had no
Mhm.
tools because I had no knowledge about pornography. I did not notice any signs in Aaron because I had no information. Aaron had
Yeah.
no tools dealing with his own addiction because he had never been taught to talk about pornography. He had never been taught to deal with, like, to understand the shame that comes along with it. So we set on a journey not just of healing ourselves and our marriage, but also how could we provide healing for our own family. And then from that, it's really grown into how can we help others. And so for Aaron, my husband, he works behind the scenes, but he's in the trenches with men who are dealing with this
Mm.
in their own lives. And I am the one who's much more comfortable talking to people on a stage and writing books. And so that became my way of helping families so that they could help their kids. And our dream is that there will be a generation of kids who don't have to grow up impacted in a negative way by pornography because their parents have been given the tools to talk about pornography openly, confidently with their kids and give their kids tools to talk about it as well. And by that, learn to reject pornography and to choose something better. So that's a very long-winded answer to your question.
That's really cool. I just want to honor you guys so much for being willing to go through that process, cuz it's one thing to just go through that healing process on your own without anybody else in the world ever knowing
Mm,
about it, right? And then you guys have come together now to make this kind of a ministry and this point where God has really used your own story to help so many other people. And I just
mm,
appreciate your willingness to talk about this because I mean, it's been a part of my marriage, my story. I've dated people who struggle, like it impacts almost everybody in
yeah,
some
it's very
way.
common. It's very common. And so few people know how to talk about it.
Yeah, which honestly is crazy to me because it seems like just such this common normal thing where it's like, oh, guys just struggle with
Mm,
pornography, guys just struggle with lust, or like, this almost normal thing that we've become desensitized
yeah.
to, but it's really doing some damage.
Yeah,
And
it really
so,
is.
yeah. So, what do you think? Like, first of all, what kind of things do women, Christian women, need to
Mm,
know? Because I know you said in the beginning, you were like, I didn't even know. Like, this
mm,
was all connected and this was having such an impact, not only on your husband, but on your marriage. And
mm,
you had to go through healing. So, where do we need to start? Like, what do
mm.
we need to know about pornography and the way it's affecting this generation?
Wow. Okay, that's a great question, and I think that there are signs of regular pornography use in a
Mm.
person, and it could be a man or a woman, and so I think that that's a really important thing to note right off the bat. Is pornography use impacts men and women. The numbers are greater for men, but the numbers for women are growing like at an incredible, astonishing rate. And I
Wow.
think that is important to recognize because it points to an important thing that are many of us, we're longing for connection, we're
Mm.
longing for intimacy, we're lonely, and we're finding it in the wrong place. And I think pornography, just like social media, are easy ways for us to feel like we're connected, to feel like we're solving the problem of our loneliness, our intimacy disorders, or longing for connection, and we're looking for that solution in the wrong place. So I think that
Mm.
that's an important thing to understand from the get-go. It's men and women who are struggling. There is an underlying reason so often why people turn to pornography. And so that would be the second thing for, I think, people to understand is a lot of times pornography use is, it's not the problem, it's a symptom of the problem. So
Mm.
it could be you're turning to pornography because you're lonely. It could also be because you're stressed. It's that dopamine hit is a great stress reliever for the moment, right?
Yeah.
It could be because you feel bad about yourself, something bad has happened to you in that moment, but also like let's look at that deeper issue again, right? Um,
Yeah.
Anxiety, boredom, all kinds of reasons people turn to pornography. But it's again, it's a symptom. It's not the root problem. And so really, can we look at the root problem? What is going on that we're turning to pornography? Just like people turn to online shopping or scrolling
Mm.
or eating or whatever we're doing to fill that hole, that emptiness that's inside. And so then as far as having that base knowledge, I think, is really important because it can give us compassion for the person who's using pornography, even if that's ourself. Not saying that using pornography is good or a right way to deal with those things. Obviously, it's not, but it can give us compassion so we can say, okay, you're hurting. There's a bigger issue. What can we do to help that? And then in
Mm.
terms of like looking for the symptoms or not the symptoms, looking for like being able to identify maybe this person is using pornography and it's a problem in their life. Looking for things like, okay, are they more angry than usual? Are they more withdrawn? Do they seem unsatisfied sexually? Well, meaning they want a lot of sex or they don't want sex.
Mm.
Are they depressed? Shame is such a huge part of this that that is really like the cause of the anger, the depression, the withdrawal, right? All of those things are being fueled by the shame because so often people that are using pornography are trying to stop. They don't want to do it,
Yeah.
but you know, it's an addiction and it's very hard to break. So, seeing those kinds of things happening in this person that you love, like a change, those are big red flags for you to be aware of. But sometimes a person, can be using it and you have no idea because they've gotten good at hiding. And
Mm.
so, I think as Christian women, wives, or a married couple, I think being really able to have a conversation to say, hey, I need to know if pornography use is a issue in your life. Are you struggling with it? And being able to be really honest and ask that question. And sometimes that can catch a person really off guard and might be the thing that they want to be able to confess. And it might not be, but that's a good place to start. And again, I think having that like freedom to be able to talk about pornography is huge because it gives us the ability to talk about those really difficult things, but in a way that is safe. And I love the idea of starting that with kids. That's why I wrote the book, because if you've created that environment for your kids, by the time they reach marriage, that they're going to be able to better equipped to be able to have those conversations in their marriage because they're used to having those conversations their whole life.
Mm, that's so good. I love that you bring up the shame aspect and like that so many people who struggle with these, like secret struggles, secret sins
Hmm.
are just used to hiding. And
Hmm.
I remember recently I was talking to some friends who were sharing about this couple who had gotten married and then all of a sudden it came out that he was a sex addict and addicted to
Hmm.
pornography and all this stuff and they were like, wow, I can't believe that, like he seemed like such a great guy, everybody would thought he was just like they were the perfect match and all these things no one
Hmm.
would have ever known. And it just hit me like, how crazy is it that he got so good at hiding?
Hmm.
Like that's the crazy thing to me is like it seems like these things are coming out, even in this is kind of off the topic, but coming out about sexual abuse and these pastors and these roles and
Hmm.
things. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
it's shocking, but like we've gotten so good at hiding. Like, what do we expect? And so I
Yeah.
love that you have kind of given this blueprint for like a proactive approach almost and teaching our kids how to have these conversations. And so like what does that look like? How do we start this on the proactive side so we
Mhm.
can avoid some of that craziness and that hurt later on?
Yeah. I think I just want to say one thing about what you said about, you think about a person who the truth about their life comes out and, you're like, oh, they seem like such a great person. Like, how could this happen? And I think that that is a really important thing for spouses and for parents to understand that, like when the truth about Aaron's sin struggle came out, I was shocked because not just because I had no idea what was going on, but because he didn't fit the profile of what I thought somebody who used pornography, who had an addiction, like he
Mm,
didn't fit that, right? He was a good
yeah.
husband. He was a good dad. He loved Jesus. He went to church.
Yeah.
But there was this deep struggle in his life. And so if you find that your spouse or your child is using pornography or even worse, is addicted to it, that's a really important thing to understand is that they are still a person that you love and they are still loved by God, but they have a serious issue in their life that needs to be addressed, that they need help with. And
Yeah.
so I think like as we think about our kids and talking to them about pornography, I always say to parents, like, we should begin praying now, long
Mm.
before our kids ever encounter pornography, long before they ever come to us and say, Mom, Dad, I've seen pornography, but that God is preparing our hearts to respond to them with grace and compassion and love because it's going to be challenging, right?
Yeah.
But when we have like that first conversation, hopefully that is going to take place before they say to us, I saw pornography. Because that's really the big deal here is we want to try to get ahead of first time exposure. We want to have our first conversation before they are exposed. That's the
Mm.
ideal. And first time pornography exposure is typically happening sometime between the ages of 8 and 12, 8 and 11. And so you want to have
Mm.
your first conversation with your kids before that, which a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. How do I talk to a
Yeah.
7-year-old about porn? Right? Like they're like,
Right.
that's my worst nightmare. And I get it. Like that should be our worst nightmare. In God's perfect plan, this would never be the case. But we live in a fallen world. And like you said, we have to be proactive because if we can give our kids the tools ahead of time before they see pornography accidentally, because usually first time exposure is accidental, then they're going to be better equipped to know what to do and not get
Mm.
trapped in a shame cycle, not get trapped by their curiosity and go back because nobody told them not to, not feel like they have to hide. We're giving them tools, we're being proactive. So, can I give an example of what that first conversation would look like?
Yes, please.
Okay. So say you have, a 7-year-old, 8-year-old, and like they're encountering lots of time online because kids at that age are already, right? They're playing games, they're on your phone, they're on an iPad, they're doing stuff for school, whatever. They're with people who have phones. So I would start it just as simply as, hey, sweetheart, buddy, I need to tell you about something called pornography. Pornography is pictures or movies of people with no clothes on showing their privates. And we know that we don't look at people's privates and we don't show them ours. So if you ever see pictures or movies like that, here's what I want you to do. I want you to either turn off the phone or turn it over. If you're on your tablet and it comes up, I want you to just push the off button. If you're on mommy's laptop, shut the computer. If somebody shows it to you on their phone or their computer, you can say, I don't want to look at that. And you can use the strongest voice you have. And then I want you to walk away from that person, walk away from that screen, and come find me or dad or grandma or grandpa, somebody who's a safe grown up, and say, I think I saw pornography. Will you help me? And we will help you. We will not
Mm.
be mad at you. You will not be in trouble. We will help you because it's our job to keep you safe from things that could hurt you. And pornography is something that could hurt you. That's your whole conversation. It's like 2 minutes. You've given them a definition. You've told them what to do if they see it. You've given them action steps and you've told them they're not in trouble. You are going to help them.
If you're a small business owner, service provider, or creative that feels stuck, let me be the first to say I have been there. When I first started my business and podcast, I felt so overwhelmed. I was constantly hearing people talk about strategies for success, how often you should post on social media, and all kinds of other things that I needed to do in order to grow. And then I finally realized that I actually wasn't going to get anywhere if I didn't first have clarity about my brand, my message, and a vision for where I wanted to go and who I wanted to reach. Before I started working with Rebecca at Daisy Creative Co., I felt overwhelmed, exhausted, and honestly clueless about the best next steps I should take to grow. But she helped me clarify my vision, my goals, and branding to set me up for long-term success. And she's actually responsible for all the beautiful Bywords branding that you see today. So if you're a small business or you want to launch a podcast or land bigger brand partnerships, your brand should support your goals. Daisy Creative Co. is a boutique brand and website design studio that helps driven entrepreneurs like you show up with confidence and clarity. Their founder, Rebecca, helps you create a standout brand that builds community, creates impact, and supports your growth. She's got a special offer for Bywords listeners, so reach out today at www.daisycreative.co or on Instagram at daisycreativeco. I love that piece about saying, I'm not going to be mad at you. Because, like, the shame piece
Mm-hmm.
immediately comes in.
Yes.
And pushes us into hiding, like tempts us to want
Yeah.
to hide and, oh, I don't want to tell anybody about this. And so I love how that's a piece of this conversation. The first conversation of like, I want to help you. I'm here
Yeah.
to help you, creating that safe relationship, I think is just, wow, that's really key because it's not, I love how at the heart of this conversation, you're not saying, this is bad. We don't do this. It's not about just avoiding the thing that's inevitable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're going to be exposed to it at some point. So I
Mhm.
love that the heart of this is like, I'm here to help you. I
Mhm.
want to give you these tools. I want you to feel equipped and like creating the safe space to talk it out. So
Yeah.
then, like, let's say they do, like, they see it and they come to you. What does that look like? Like, how do we walk
Yeah.
through explaining that, especially to a child that's so little, or if as the parent we feel uncomfy about it?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it's a little different depending on the scenario, but let's say the scenario is it's a kid who is pretty young and you know that this was not something they were searching out, like purposely is accidental exposure.
Mm,
And they come and tell you and you say, "I'm so glad you told me."
mm,
That was really smart and really brave. And you affirm them in their decision to talk to you. And you can say, I think you might be feeling like confused or even maybe even a little scared right now. And I just want you to know that I am here to help you. Dad's here to help you. We're going to help you deal with what you saw. And then you are going to, you're going to have some more conversations after that, like figure out what they saw, where they saw it, figure out what safety plan you need to put into effect, like a digital
mm.
safety plan to be better equipped to protect them than, what has happened so far.
Yeah.
But the foundation is you have done the right thing by telling me
Mm,
and you are safe and we're going to help you. If it's a kid who comes and confesses to you that they've been looking at porn or you find out that they have, that is
mm.
more challenging, obviously, right? That is a
Yeah.
situation where you might even be dealing with your own issues with pornography. So you might be feeling mad. You might feel scared. You might feel disappointed, sad, a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so in that moment, it's so important to ask the Holy Spirit to be with you, to respond with gentleness, with peace. And you're going to say that exact same thing, that foundational piece of, I'm
Mm,
so sorry for what you've seen. I'm so glad you told me. Or if they didn't tell you, I'm so sorry for what you've seen. But even though you didn't tell me, I'm here to help you. And if
mm,
you're feeling confused or scared or curious about what you've seen, I want to help you with all of that. And if they're even older, if they're old enough to understand that pornography and sex are like that there's a similarity there, because when kids are really little, they don't even need to know that pornography and sex are part of the same story, right? Like they don't need to know, like parents will say, well, I can't talk to my kid about pornography because they don't know what sex is. And I'm like, good. They don't need to know
mm.
about both of those things simultaneously, right? Like, let's just keep pornography as something bad and you don't need to have anything to do with it. But if they are older, like if they're a teen, like I think it's so important for us to say, I want you to know that that is not what God designed sex to be. What you
Mm,
saw is not the truth. It is a lie and it is a distortion of God's good thing. And so there are different ways that we approach this scenario, but at the heart of it is always that foundational piece of, I'm so glad that you told me, or I'm so glad I can help you. I love you. I'm here for you.
I love that. That's really, really good. I think just being able to make that distinction when they are little, because it can feel so overwhelming. I mean,
Of
if there's a
course.
mom listening who's got little kids, I mean, my oldest is my son is 5, and
Mhm.
so thinking about having these conversations, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm sweaty.
Mm.
This is stressful.
Yeah.
I don't even know
Yeah.
where to begin, and so it's really kind of, I can take a sigh of relief. Like we don't have to have these huge, huge
Right.
conversations today with
No.
our kids, and I love that you can kind of just invite the Holy Spirit into that conversation, like
Mhm.
you said, use wisdom, like what do they need to know right now for
Yeah.
them to feel safe, that they can come
Mhm.
talk to me, that I love them, I want to help them, and it kind of like takes the pressure off of us to like
Yeah.
get it right, because I know I've been like, oh man, I don't want to screw this up, but
Yeah.
it's just about being available. for them,
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, and I always say you give them the least amount of information possible to keep them
Mm,
the most safe because they really don't, in the beginning they need very minimal amounts of information. It's just like I always say like if you tell them don't touch the hot stove or don't cross the street without me. You don't go into all the details of what could happen if they get a third-degree burn and show them, horrible pictures of what the potential devastation could be. You just say, this
yeah.
stove is hot, it'll hurt you. Trust mommy and don't touch it. If you get hit by a car, it will be really painful. Don't cross the street without mom. I'm here to keep you safe. And so, pornography conversation, one, two, three, four, and five, those are just the same. Like you're just saying, this thing is dangerous for you. I want to keep you safe. Here's how you can be safe on a screen. These are the things
Mm,
you need to do. So, it's very simple, it's very basic. And you really are giving your kids the tools to stay safe in a digital world. This is their digital safety plan. It's scary to us parents because we didn't have to have that same kind of digital safety plan when we were their
right.
age. But our kids are growing up in a different time, so we have to do things differently.
Right, exactly. And I'm so curious if you're willing to share what it looked like for you and your husband. Like, what if there's a mom listening and she's like, well, I don't feel equipped to talk to my kids about
Mm,
this. Like, this is a struggle. We're still working out in our own
mm,
marriage. Or like a woman
yeah,
listening, like, I struggle with this. How am I supposed to help my kid?
yeah. Well, when our kids were little, that was our own struggle, wasn't part of the story. We really wanted to wait
Mm,
till they were older to be able to fully understand the redemption process of what God
yeah.
did in our lives. But that did not stop us from telling them the truth about pornography. And so we shared with them at the beginning just those basic tools. And then as they get older, they get more and more of the story. And now our kids are, 21, 18, 16, and 13, and they know everything. They have a real freedom to be able to talk about anything with us. I would say sometimes they're like, it's a little too free around here. We talk about everything. Oh my gosh. Now my two oldest boys have girlfriends and they're like, oh my gosh, you never know what the conversation will be around our table. Just the other day, like, I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about birth control. One of the girlfriends was there. We were all in the living room. And the 13-year-old goes, wait, what's birth control? And because he hasn't had that conversation yet. And then my son's like, oh my gosh, don't tell him about birth control right now when my girlfriend's sitting here.
Oh,
I
that
was
is
like, we'll
so
talk about
funny.
it later. But I'm not going to shut him down because that's a huge component of this is not shutting down our kids' questions.
Mm,
If they have a question, let's be honest. If we don't have to give them more information than they need, so I'm not going to give the 13-year-old any more information than he needs, but I am going to honestly answer his question at an appropriate time, maybe not when the girlfriend's there. She might not be ready for that in that context, but don't shut your kids' questions down. Answer them honestly because that creates this community, this culture in your home of we can talk about anything. We're not ashamed of our bodies. We're not ashamed of our past, and we're in fact celebrating what God has done, how He's given us redemption. Those are the ways that we have cultivated that in our family,
mm.
and I think it's been a beautiful gift.
I love that. It's just, again, going back to that, like, we don't have to spill every detail right now,
Yeah.
but just kind of like walking with them for whatever level they're at, I feel like is very freeing for us to just be in the process with them. Because
Hmm.
I feel like, there are some parents, and I mean, I have some friends who are like, I don't feel like I'll ever have this perfect in my own life. So, like, how can I ever help my kids? Like, I just feel like it's not even worth it to have the conversation because I don't have all the answers? And it's like, it's not about having all the answers or like having it perfect all the time. I think it's just, like you said, not shutting them down because then they feel safe to ask their questions and you can process with them and be like, hey, well, let's just see what God's word says about that together. Like, make it something that they can feel safe doing with you. Because I know, like, obviously, if our kids aren't going to come to us, like, where are they going to get that information from?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I always say tell your kids that you are their Google. Like don't let them Google for information. You be their Google because they don't even know. Like when we were kids, there was an end to the information available. Like I could look up something in the dictionary. It's say I heard a term at school and I wanted to know what it was. And I knew like, oh, this is kind of iffy. I don't know what it is for sure, but I don't think I want to ask my mom. I could look in the dictionary. I could look in encyclopedia. I could go to the library, but there is an end to the information. Now for our kids, there is no end. Like they hear something and they want to look it up on Google. There is no end. And who knows what they could find. That's not their
Right.
fault. That's our fault for not telling them, hey, don't go to Google. If you have a question, you can ask me. You do not have to worry. I will not be mad at you if you ask me a question. I want to be the one to answer your questions. Don't ask your friends. Don't ask your anybody else. Don't ask Google. Ask me. I will be the person that you can ask. And that starts from the time they're little, helping them see you as that person.
I love that. I think that's so good. I would love to kind of shift gears just for a second, if you don't mind, and talk about like, what does the healing process look like if you are a
Mm,
mom to an older kid who's struggling with
mm,
pornography addiction, or if your spouse is like,
mm,
how do you heal and, like keep yourself safe in that
mm,
situation, but also help someone that you love who's struggling,
mm.
but, in their struggle, it's kind of hurt you. Does that make
Yeah, of
sense?
course. Yes. It's really hard. I'll just be perfectly honest. It is hard work.
Yeah.
And the betrayal, there's betrayal for both, for your spouse or your kid. But it's different because it impacts you as, differently as a wife or as a mom.
Right.
But there is betrayal that has happened. And so there is healing that needs to happen for both of those situations. And I think that's really important for like the mom whose child has used porn, because we don't always think about addressing the hurt of the mom or the dad in that situation, but it's real.
Yeah.
And there are so many resources available, especially for betrayed wives. There are less available for betrayed moms who are dealing with their kids' pornography use or addiction, but there are some.
Mm,
One is an organization called Hopeful Mom that a friend of mine,
mm,
Barbara Winters, runs, and she is a mom of a child who had a porn addiction and found herself feeling very lonely. I think that's one of the hardest
mm.
parts of dealing with pornography addiction, is whether you're a spouse or a parent, it's incredibly lonely because you don't want to share with anybody, not just because
Yeah.
of the shame, that's huge, but also you want to protect that person because you love them,
Right.
you care about them, but you need to have community around you. For wives, there's an organization called Pure Desire that has a
Mm,
wonderful group for women, for wives, and it's called Betrayal and Beyond. I've walked through one of their classes with a friend of mine. But I think the number one thing is to find a community, even if that community is one person that you can
mm.
be honest and open with. And if they don't have any information, I mean, like experience with this, rather, they can still listen, they can still pray for you, they can cry with you. Doing it not alone is just, that's the best thing. And then giving yourself time. It takes a long time to heal from this, I remember in the beginning of my healing journey, when I could go for an hour without thinking of the hurt or the anger,
Mm,
of the anxiety, the fear, that felt like a huge victory. When I could go a day, that was
mm.
incredible. And that was just God working in my heart. Like the feeling would come, the thought would come, and I would surrender it to Him and say, Lord, take this. I can't carry this on my own. It's too heavy. It's too hard. And then to be able to go like a whole month, I don't think I've ever gone a whole year without something, triggering, and those thoughts coming back, but it's not the heavy weight that it was. But it's been 15 years, and 15 years,
Wow.
sometimes that trigger still happens, and I'll feel sad or mad or anxious. And I have to give that to God. So
Mm.
give yourself time and give yourself people. Those are the two best things that I could recommend for the healing process.
That's so good. I'm curious, as you work your way through that healing process, what does it look like to kind of rebuild that trust? I mean, are there
Mm,
things that you put in place, whether it's with a child or with your spouse, that we can
mm,
do to where it's like, okay, I want to support you. I also want to protect myself. I want to rebuild this
mm.
trust. So, how can we kind of safeguard moving forward?
Yeah, I think there has to be complete vulnerability, meaning you have access to passwords, you have access to accounts. It might be that you need to suspend accounts, no
Mm.
Instagram, no TikTok, no, social media. There are so many ways to access pornography. I mean, I have every safety thing installed on my phone, and I could open my blocked, they're not even the blocked messages because Instagram doesn't block it, but whatever the like hidden messages are on my
Yeah.
Instagram, and they're full of propositions. Watch this video, XXX. And
Mm,
and I'm not looking at that stuff. It's not in my algorithm,
yeah.
but it's showing up in my messages. So if you're a person who's struggling with porn, how tempting is that? I would say, addressing all of those places where they could access pornography. But the trick is, as a spouse or even as a mom, you should not be the police officer. You should not be
Mm,
combing through all of their stuff and be constantly on guard for watching them mess up, because that is not building your trust. It is putting
yeah.
you in a place of you're just it's spiking your cortisol, your anxiety, your fear, your control, because you're like, well, if I just constantly monitor every single thing, then I
Mm,
can keep this from happening again. And you're not the one in control of that. God's in control of it, and they're in control of it. So they need an accountability partner. You could have accountability software put on computers and phones and screens. And I highly recommend that. But you should not be
mm.
the person that gets notified by an email when they're looking at a suspicious website. That should be somebody else. It doesn't mean that you don't know about it. That other person can communicate with you. But there are things you should do, like accountability software, like getting rid of social media, things like that, but you shouldn't carry it alone. Again, it's
Mm.
about community. So finding people who are part of the community, because if you're trying to control everything that's coming into their life and keeping track of all that they're doing, you will crumble. It's too much. And it's taking the responsibility off of them as well. So
Yeah.
as a parent, those are things you would do as well. It's not just like in a betrayal situation, uh, an addiction situation between spouses. That goes the same for parents as well.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because I have wrestled with that where it's like, I want to help this person that I love, but it's hurting me to
Mhm.
be obsessed with protecting them. It's
Yeah.
too much for us to carry. So I love that you bring in like the accountability. There are so many software, there's so many
Hmm.
resources today, thankfully, that can
Yeah.
help with that. Do you have any that you recommend? Like, what are some of your favorite resources for software or other like safeguards?
Yeah, I mean, for accountability software, that's their blocking, thing. Like it kind of makes using the internet a pain, which is fine, right? Like in an ideal world, I think that your spouse or your kid would get a flip phone and so that solves the problem right there. But then they could still access stuff on, computers, on through gaming devices, through tablets. So in those cases, you're going to need to install things like accountability software. Covenant Eyes is one. And then there are other things too that you can do, like, of course, installing parental control or enabling parental controls on phones and computers. But I think if pornography use or addiction is in play here, like you're going to need more than just, no explicit material on a phone, because the apps that people use, pornography is available through apps. And if you just have, parental controls enacted on a phone or a device, they're not enough to block that stuff on the apps. So, that's where you need to have more stuff in play. But I
Mm.
think we can't ever rely just on those types of things like parental controls or accountability software. We really need the human element, and that's another person in their life who they are accountable to, that they can call, that they can say, I'm feeling triggered, something has happened, and I want to use pornography right now. Can you walk me through it?
Yeah.
So that also involves education, right? Understanding their addiction. Like, okay, what are their triggers? What are the things that make them want to turn to pornography for that dopamine hit, to fill that real need that is there with a substitute that is not going to deal with the real problem. So, learning to understand their triggers, having ways to escape, like having an escape plan, those are things that come through education. And those are available for adults and kids, and they're so valuable. There are books and programs. So many of us don't know where to turn, and we're even afraid to
Right.
Google. We're like, how do I Google that? I don't know. That's why I wrote my book, because I wanted people to not have to turn to Google in a moment where they're like, I don't know what to do. They could open my book and there will be concrete things for them to put in place, answers to their questions, and even like, scripts for conversations. Because in a moment that feels like a crisis, we need help, not fear of what will I find if I Google this thing.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, it can just be so scary as a mom, as a wife, and it would be so tempting to just, avoid the subject altogether.
Yeah.
But going back to what you mentioned in the beginning, how this is a symptom
Mm,
of something else going on, just being willing to stay in relationship as you walk through the healing process, like, yes, uncomfortable, yes, vulnerable, yes, sometimes painful, but that I feel like is one of the most effective ways we can actually get to the root issue. Like, what is actually leading this person down this path? Because it's not just like one day they decided, I think probably I'm going to start watching pornography every day. Like
right.
there's always something else there. And I love how you emphasize the relationship aspect, because I feel like that more than any other, software to just avoid it or try, like just trying to block out the symptom thing. We got to get to the heart, the root issue. And
Mhm.
and so much of that healing, I feel, doesn't come unless there is that accountability through community and relationship with people who can love them through it.
Yeah. And I think, if a person isn't willing to change, of course, with the kid and a spouse, those are, again, two different scenarios. If you, I just want to speak really frankly, like to your listeners, if, you're in a situation where you have a spouse who is not willing to change their pornography use, I would never advocate for you to just keep putting up with that, because,
Mm,
um, pornography use an addiction that is cumulative, meaning, like in my case, it often leads to more and more problematic behavior. And so, yes, we want to love the person who is hurting, but we also want them to heal. We want them to
mm,
have change. And so the situation of it being your spouse, like that is going to require change on their part, and maybe even big changes. Like, they might have to step away from the family and the marriage for a while if they're not willing to change,
mm,
and to get the healing that they desperately need. For your kid, they need healing and help as well, but you're not going to kick them out of the house because they can't stop using pornography,
right.
unless they are putting themselves or other people in your family in danger,
Mm,
which, those are worst case scenarios, but that happens with repeated porn use, or it can happen. And I don't say those things to scare anybody, but to just really help, people understand like the depth of the depravity of the pornography industry, and
mm,
that they don't care if their victim is a husband or a wife who loves their family and wants to be an involved, spouse and parent. They don't care if it's a kid who is using their product. All they care about is getting a person addicted so that they can profit off of them for as long as possible. And when we
mm,
understand that, it gives us, one, grace and compassion for the person who's fallen into pornography use, but it also should give us like a fire in our hearts to
mm.
say, no, this is not okay. And we're going to fight to achieve change and healing for the person we know who is engaged in this, because they deserve better. And so do we.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. I so appreciate you again, just being willing to not only have these conversations and, walk through the healing journey for yourself and in your own life, But now being able to equip so many other women to have these conversations, like even as much as giving a script, like really
Mhm.
simplifying the process for us. Like I really appreciate that there are people like you having these conversations, especially from a faith lens. Like this is not God's best. So what
Yeah.
can we as the women do about this problem? And so I'd love to know right before we go, like, is there any last advice or encouragement you want to leave with the women who are
Mm.
listening?
Yes, actually, Hannah, I want to echo what you said, that pornography is not God's best, and that God gave us the gift of sex because it's good and it's beautiful and it's his design for the most intimate connection between two people that exists. And it's a picture of the intimacy we have with him, right? Because he loves us that much. And pornography wants to distort it, and it wants to pull us away, keep us hiding in shame, away from our relationship with God, away from our relationship with each other. It's not his best. And we want to offer our kids and our families something so much better. And that's why we have to talk to our kids about porn.
Yep, that's right. Amen. And that's it. Well, Greta, thank you so much for being here. I'm just so excited for everybody to get your book. Can you tell everyone where they can find you, grab a copy, all the things from here?
Sure. The book is anywhere books are sold. You could find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and Walmart even has it on their website, not in their stores, but in their website. Thrift books, christianbook.com. It's all over the place. So actually, in this case, you can Google. It's time to talk to your kids about porn, and my book will come right up. It'll be the first thing. So don't be afraid. I give you permission in this instance. And for finding me, I'm on Instagram. That's my one social media, and that's where I'm the most active. I also have a website, gretaeskridge.com, and just look me up and you'll find me. And I would love to connect with you because this is something that I care about deeply, and I want to help families, spouses, parents, and kids.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Greta. I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for this book. I can't wait for everybody to get their hands on it and to connect with you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Hannah. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to tune in to another episode of the Byword Show. I love having you here, and your support truly means the world to me. If you enjoyed this episode, would you leave a quick review? It really helps our community grow and reach more women. If you want more, you can shop my books, Waking Up, Living Open, and Love Is on Amazon, and be sure to sign up for my email list so you always get the latest news. I can't wait to chat again soon, but in the meantime, be sure to come hang out with me on social media, and remember, I'm cheering you on.